Good evening and welcome to the Bethel Local School Board meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order on June 13th, 2022 at 7 p.m. My name is Lori Sebastian. I've been on the Bethel Local School Board 7 years and Board Vice President and will be conducting our meeting tonight. For those who are newer to the district, I'm a numbers person. I'm degreed in math with a strong computer science minor and learned a lot about school finance over the years, including obtaining my school treasurer license. How I got involved in this district was probably like many of you. I volunteered in the school. I worked with the PTO hosting the Student of the Month breakfast. I worked with the music program and music boosters by helping accompany when Ms. Clemens was unavailable, and I served as athletic booster treasurer. During that time, I chaired levies in 2012 and 2014 and chaired the bond issue, which built the new high school edition, which we are sitting in tonight. I will always be grateful to the people in this community who supported that bond issue. Our board president, Mrs. Mansfield, and Superintendent Mr. Firks are not with us tonight. I spoke with Mr. Firks today and will be reading his notes for his portion of the agenda. Further, Mrs. Jones will be reading Mr. Swope and Mr. Triplett's principal reports. I want to thank her for that. It takes a lot of time and energy and planning to make sure everything goes smoothly, so I'd like to say a big thank you to Mrs. Mansfield for all her work leading these meetings. I'd also like to recognize our communications director, Mr. Jacob Watson. Hi, Jacob. And technology director, Mr. Jason Cook, who helped set up for our meeting tonight. Lastly, I'd like to welcome our online audience who may be listening now or in the future and mention that we may also have interim superintendent candidates listening to our meeting tonight. If you haven't already got them, I have 3 handouts plus the public participation agenda items. One, I just want to point out, if you want to come up if you haven't gotten them, one is the Bethel Grand Legacy and community donations for our Bethel Legacy program. If you have any questions, Mr. Bird, would you stand up? He's the person you need to see about donating. The second one is a green flyer about the cost of educating students, and the third one is a yellow handout, which, Mrs. Beam, if you don't mind, I'm going to answer your question that you had at the work session about the teacher and salary schedule. So I wanted to print that and go through that tonight. Okay, Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Mrs. Donahue?
Here.
Mrs. Franz?
Here. Will you join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have 4 additions to the agenda. Number 6, treasurer's item requesting board action. Letter I, approval of transfers. The second one is letter J, approval of student teacher stipends for June of 2022. Letter L, approval of amended certificate and appropriation resolution. And the fourth item is superintendent's items requesting board action, approval of certificated employees. We also have E, board discussion action items for custodial conversion to family bathroom, which we are removing. Okay. It was added and subsequently removed. All right. Hearing of the public regarding agenda. Does anyone else have additions to the agenda, I should ask? Okay. Hearing of the public regarding agenda items. Okay, we have 4. Mrs. Crowley. Okay. Mrs. Reese.
How about now? Good. Okay, so a couple of things. So kind of quickly, one thing was about the partition doors and the new K through 5, which I said at the last meeting. This doesn't seem to be a great solution at the price of $35,000. I don't know if that's going to be voted tonight or not. The paving, we were told 5 years, and now we're replacing it after 3. So I'm not sure why that's being done either. It seems like it would be maybe better to just do crack seal and fix the bad areas and then push the paving a little bit. For the principal, I guess I just have some questions. One is, making a new principal for basically 2 grade levels, because young fives is really part of kindergarten. So it's kind of K and 1 with the young fives. It doesn't seem, how do we have a principal for 2 grade levels is my question. That's not something that's normally done. It doesn't say when it's effective. It just says salary increase and then the upgrade. And then how long is it going to be before we now are told we have to have an assistant elementary principal because we don't have an assistant anymore? And the other question is, why wouldn't Mrs. Jones's contract also be amended? Because she's now becoming the 2 through 5 principal. So that's my questions on that. And then the last thing is comments on the business manager. My feeling is that a business manager is not the answer to our current problems. I agree that help is needed in the treasurer's office. We've probably been shorthanded there for a while, starting with Emis. A full-time Emis person, I was told, is about $45,000 a year. That seems to be a more financially sound solution over a $95,000 business manager who would be doing that Emis for half the time at twice the price. We're also about to get a new superintendent. I think that we should wait for that to help set the direction. Also on the agenda is an item to pay a contractor $60,000 to teach someone Emis. So we would be hiring a business manager, I guess, who doesn't know Emis, and then pay another $60,000 to teach them Emis. Also, we have a lot of administrators, and this is another administrator that was not in the budget, and it seems to be very expensive. So I don't know. We don't have an element. We can't finish the 5th grade wing yet. So I'm always concerned about spending money. So I guess that would be my question: is what's the justification for this? I know probably one of the things when I asked was maybe helping out doing construction, but we probably have some current staff that could help with that until the new superintendent is here. We have a lot of administrators already, and I think some of them don't work 260 days, so possibly one of them could help and be paid for it, get a stipend, which would keep us from having to hire somebody to do that. I guess that's about it. Thank you.
I will answer 2 of your questions. The Emis contract is $60,000, but it is a 2-year contract. It would be $30,000 for administrative oversight. When we lost Mrs. Gail Rhodes, we lost like 3 people. She's like a legend. Mrs. Hageman has already contacted the person, and the thing is, if our numbers are not coded right in Emis, we don't get funding. And while to many people $30,000 may seem like a lot of money, my guess is this person's going to pay for themselves 2 times over because of some of the errors and some of the data that's not correct right now. Mrs. Rhodes did a fabulous job, but she just didn't have time to dig into some things. So thank you for your comments, Mrs. Reese. The second one is Mrs. Schock's contract. Keep in mind, this was Mr. Ferks's recommendation. I can't speak to why he divided 2 to 5 and K1, but keep in mind, Mrs. Schock is taking on K-12 gifted coordinator services as well. It's not just she's going to be a young 5 kindergarten and first principal. I'll read this later as part of her administrator contract, but it is saving the district $7,900 because previously we were paying the ESC $10,000 for gifted services. So some of that administrative cost is being absorbed by her taking those duties on. The next person I'd like to hear from, Mrs. Kiplinger.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the discussion for the partitions in the new elementary. I guess that you've tabled the existing middle school, so I don't need to address that. However, it is overlapping. This does not take away the issue of allowing males into female bathrooms or females into the male bathroom. This solves nothing and could be more dangerous than the typical bathroom setup. We need to stop acquiescing to the minority and start doing what is right for all the children by keeping the males and females separate in the bathroom and locker room facilities. If the concern is providing a space for individual bathroom use, then do it right and make 2 or 3 unisex or family bathrooms, whatever you want to call them, in the new elementary. You already have the supplies donated for the middle school unisex bathroom. That should be enough. And unless and until the board reverses their position on allowing either gender into the bathrooms, I don't see how this will help. It's been 6 months since the board has announced their stance. What has happened? A lot of community members speaking out against the stance, and some speaking for it. A promise of a community forum with no action. And yet no one has tried to come up with a reasonable solution or find common ground. I've seen the crocodile tears of the board members when some of the community speak for the opposite sex students to use the bathroom of their choice, and the smug and dismissiveness when those against commingling the males and females speak. This is a board that really needs to listen to the community, to the people who elected you to do a job and find solutions. Please stop throwing Band-Aids on this problem and do something effective. Let's get back to using some common sense and stop allowing feelings to overrule facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kiplinger. Mrs. Beam? Kiplinger, I apologize. Mrs. Beam?
Thank you. My concern is on Agenda 11F, discussion of creation of a business manager position. I'm concerned about whether this position is necessary, and if so, where the funds will come from to pay the salary. Since Mr. Firks came to Bethel in 2019, we've already added 6 new administrative positions. 1 IT director at $72,000, communication director, $46,000, and that's only for 225 days per year. Curriculum director, I could not find that salary. Assistant middle school, high school principal, transportation director, $83,000. The assistant treasurer, $53,000. The accounts payable manager, I couldn't find that salary either. In addition to the assistant elementary principal that has been promoted to a second elementary principal, each of them are making almost $90,000 a year. Keep in mind that our treasurer makes $115,000 a year. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a lot of money, and taxpayers are concerned where it's coming from. As now we are discussing whether we need to hire a business manager at $95,000 per year. It's my understanding that this new position is intended to provide assistance not only to the transportation director, but to the treasurer as well, even though the treasurer already has an assistant treasurer and accounts payable manager providing assistance. I want to make sure that the discussion about hiring a business manager are transparent regarding where the funds are coming from, not only for the new position, but for the other positions, both new and promoted. I think I speak for many taxpayers and concerned community members when I ask that you, as elected board members, ensure these positions are necessary, and if so, that the money to pay these salaries is available now and not just projected funds that may or may not be available in an uncertain financial environment we currently face. I hope the business manager position being considered is not based solely on the recommendation of the outgoing superintendent. Do you as school board members also feel this position is necessary at a time when we are looking both for an interim superintendent and eventually a superintendent? It makes more sense to me that our new superintendent be part of the discussion to fill this important position. Keep in mind that unfortunately many in the Bethel community, myself included, have reason to question whether some board members make decisions based on what is best for our students, teachers, staff, and community. In all honesty, I have a hard time understanding the possible reasons besides some of your recent decisions you have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Beam. I will respond to a couple of those items. First of all, we have historically always had an IT director. That is not a new position. Mrs. Rhodes was our transportation director, and while we did add an assistant middle school, high school principal, those, as I said, when Gail left, we lost 3 people in 1. We have always had 3 people in the treasurer's department, a treasurer and 2 others. If you remember, Lynn Sarah and trying to think who the other person was. Barb Fisher. So we've had the same number of people in our treasurer staff historically.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but they're not the same position. These ones that I'm talking about have now been administrative positions. The other ones were like classified.
Megan's is not an administrative position to my knowledge. She's on the classified staff. And the IT director, to get someone qualified in today's world, as I told someone the other day, you can't pay somebody $15 an hour to do IT. They can go to Target or to McDonald's and make that. So what we're finding in the schools is just like what's happening all over the country. We have to pay our people.
And I'm not saying that, but the funds, where are they coming from?
They
That's a
will be
lot of
coming
money.
from the operating budget.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you've hired these like the assistant principal. He was assistant principal, transportation director. And I mean, I was at the work session, but we're not allowed to speak. You're trying to find someone, even K-12 services told you that you're not going to find someone to do Emis, transportation, help the treasurer, all that. So that's a lot of money, and we have no job description. You didn't even have a job description. There's not a job description for several of these to even see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We can't find job descriptions.
There are job descriptions, to my knowledge, on all current staff that was completed this past year.
Okay, could you get those for me, please?
I believe if you ask our treasurer, she will get that to you after the meeting. I mean,
A job
just-
description of all these ones that I just said?
The only one we do not have a job description are, and Tina is still, Mrs. Hageman is still working on, is the purchasing or business manager. But all the other ones should have been done when we had the company do those in
Okay, I'd
2022.
like, do you have a job description for the business manager?
That's what I said.
That's the one
We are still
don't
working
have
on
because
that
that's
one.
not a current position
Yes.
within the district. I certainly think we have elementary principals, assistant principal, and all the other positions that you noted. I think the curriculum director comes through the ESC, so that's not our position.
Yeah, and
That's
we
a
always
purchase
have had a
service contract, and that's an ongoing contract that you guys have had since before, I don't know.
We've had a
Um,
curriculum director.
yeah.
It's just been through the ESC, and you didn't
So
realize
that's why
it.
you wouldn't
We have
find
always
a
had that
salary
as
for
well.
that
Yeah.
person.
Right.
But yeah, if you want to send me an email or give me a list after the meeting, or you can write it down for me, and
And
I'll
I
do it
also
for
will
you.
ask which one of these are administrative positions. Would you be able to clarify
Sure.
that for me too, please?
I sure could.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mrs. Beam. Mrs. Brewer, new hires on the agenda. Mrs. Brewer is president of our Bethel Education Association.
All right, I would just like to thank all the teachers who have sat in the interviews recently. We really appreciate the administration providing us the opportunity and trusting us to choose the best candidate for our school. We take great pride in being a Bethel Bee, and we expect the best from our new hires. So welcome to the Hive.
Thank you, Mrs. Brewer. I'm going to bring up important dates to know. So our next work session will be July 5th at 5:30. Our facilities meeting decided tonight, and this is pending approval with Mr. Jeremy Myers, that we would be doing a tour at 5:30 p.m. on July 11th, and then the meeting will follow. So it might be closer to 6:15, I can't say, but we probably will have things to discuss and to recommend at that July 11th meeting. And then our regular Board of Education meeting follows at July 11th. We see some band activities going on in late July, and then Safety Town's coming for our kindergarten students. Are there any other dates that need added to the agenda? Okay. Now for our principal reports, Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Schock.
All right, good evening. For our upcoming events, we currently have our summer reading program for students going into 3rd and 4th grade that's going on right now at the elementary for the next 2 weeks after this week. July 25th through the 29th will be Safety Town for our incoming kindergarten students. August 8th will be our next kindergarten screening date. That will be for any new families that have moved in or anyone who missed our April or May screening. August 24th will be our first day of school for 1st through 12th grade, and we've scheduled kindergarten KRA appointments with all of our kindergartners who have come to screening so far. And the 25th will also be our second day of KRA appointments for those students who have been screened already, and August 26th will be the first day of school for kindergarten. We had a great end of the year. We had our kindergarten ceremony where all of our kindergarten class sang for their parents and grandparents. We thank Mrs. Rust, our music teacher, for the time and effort put into that wonderful program. At the conclusion of the music program, each kindergartner was called down to receive a graduation certificate from their teacher, and we couldn't be more proud of our new first graders. The first graders put on a play, and they performed Down on the Farm for their parents in Bethel Hall. They sang as a group, had individual and small group speaking parts, and even transformed themselves into farm animals for the play. So great job to our first graders. We can't wait to see many of these students on the Bethel stage in the years to come. We'd like to thank the TIP Foundation for their generous grant that allowed us to purchase a 2-year license for mystery science. Teachers in Young Fives all the way through 5th grade will be able to utilize this program to enhance their classroom science curriculum. Every lesson is specifically designed to captivate the students with the flow of short video clips, interwoven group and class discussions, interactive hands-on labs, and conclusion questions that assess their knowledge. Kindergarten students enjoyed learning about animals and their defense mechanisms to keep them safe, and they even walked in the land lab afterwards looking for those animals and insects that they learned about. Finally, our field day was fantastic. We had beautiful weather for both days, which we were thrilled about. We thank Mrs. Vokey and all the parent volunteers for their help with field day, and students really enjoyed relay races, obstacle courses, parachutes, hula hoops, and kickball.
Mrs. Schock mentioned we are into our summer reading program already for this year. We invited several going into 3rd and 4th grade students. We have 12 second graders, last year's second graders, and 13 third graders that are meeting in the mornings for all of this week and next week. Parents, please note, if you're listening, there will not be summer school on Monday, next Monday, June 20th, in observance of Juneteenth. The 2nd and 7th celebration is the next one on there. This was the reading program that our high school students helped out with our second graders, meeting with them every other week to read a story with them and teaching them some of the different character traits and things like that that we had been focused on for the year. Thank you to several people who made this possible, including Mr. Ferks, who wrote the grant to make this possible and get all those books. Damon Smith and Julie Gravitt also helped with the planning and scheduling of this. And then some of those pictures you're seeing, the high school students were doing a book signing at the end, and the students enjoyed that as well. The next item on here was a 3rd grade mini mall. Several of our 2nd and 4th graders were invited to shop at the mini mall. Our 3rd graders learned about being an entrepreneur as part of their social studies curriculum. So they each were put into groups and created a product to sell. They learned about advertising as well, and I think a lot of them learned how hard it is to stand all day long. So they might be looking for different jobs in the future. They didn't really like standing all day. The last one I had on there was our 5th grade celebration. This was fantastic. We got a chance to go to the Orbit Fun Center for all of our 5th graders who earned this end of the year reward. They had pizza and skating, and they had some black light paint on their face, so they all really enjoyed that as well. Any questions?
Thank you,
about anything?
Mrs. Schock and Mrs. Jones. Does anyone have questions on the board? Thank you for all the pictures and all the enthusiasm. I still remember the 1st grade end of year program with the farm animals and getting the paint stick, and of course Mini Mall. How could we forget that? Fun times. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Jones, you're going to read Mr. Triplett's and Mr.
Yes.
Swope's report. I really appreciate you doing that tonight.
No problem. So for the middle school, for Mr. Triplett, he just wants to send out a thank you to all the BLS staff, parents, and students. They had a great year at BMS, and they're looking forward to their 17 new students that have enrolled for next school year. I'm sure they'll get many more than that before August comes around. For high school, graduation took place on Saturday, May 28th at Hobart Arena. There were 113 students that graduated this past May, and they've already secured Hobart for next year's graduation as well. The high school is also doing a summer school program. They're using a different electronic style learning platform this year that was more affordable for students and more user-friendly. Students have been reporting to the school the last 2 weeks for 3 hours a day. If they do not finish their course, they can continue working at home until they do so. And there were 30 high school students that enrolled in at least one summer school class. The student schedules for next school year will be made available online beginning August 1st, or they can be picked up at school on August 11th and 12th. On August 17th or 18th, students can come to the school to meet with counselors if they need to make any changes to their schedules. No appointment is necessary, and the counselors will be here from 9 to 2 each of those days. And then he has some upcoming dates. That actually reminds me, on the elementary report, we did forget to include our open house. Ours will be on August 22nd. We're splitting those. And it may be good for parents to realize that the elementary has a lot of stairs and no elevator, so just keep that in mind if you're bringing little ones and strollers.
Yeah, and we'll make sure the open houses get on the July board meeting so that they're very clear. Does anyone have any questions about the middle school or high school report? I did just want to say thank you to Mr. Swope, Mrs. Montgomery, Mrs. Brewer, the many teachers who were involved in graduation. I believe we had 107 of 113 kids march, which to me is just phenomenal. I think COVID's really kind of changed our outlook. I also want to thank Mrs. Donahue and Mrs. Mansfield, our 4 administrators, some of whom probably didn't even know the seniors, but Mr. Triplett, Mrs. Schock, and Ms. Jones were all at graduation, and I really appreciate that. And for those other teachers and staff who attended, thank you. I think it means a lot to the kids to see those people who have been part of their lives. All right. All right, now I get to turn the mic over to Mrs. Hageman for the treasurer's items requesting board action.
Okay, need approval of the meeting minutes. We have quite a few here. May 3rd, that's item A. Item B is May 9th. Item C is May 18th, and I did make those changes for your request, Mrs. Donahue, so thank you for catching that. Item D is the meeting minutes from May 20th. Then item E is approval of payment of bills, so that's our detailed check register for the month of May.
Do you want me to pull any of that up or just wait till the financial report?
You can pull up the check register. It's sort of hard to see.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if that really tells me.
It shows every check that was cut for the month of May.
One thing I should mention, because I don't think we've done it recently, if you want to find what we're talking about online and you're listening in, you go to www.bethelk12.org. You go to the menu. This is how I do it. You could probably search too. You go under district to Board of Education, and then you go down to the bottom and it'll say board docs right here. Does everybody see that? I don't know if you can see the screen, but if you click on board docs, it'll take you to all the meetings and agendas. I just want to point that out because sometimes we assume everybody knows that, but if you ever want to go back and look at something we've talked about, it's there. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Mrs. Hageman.
That's fine. Okay, so then item F is approval of the monthly financial report. So move on down. First, you have your bank rec, and then I try to compare what we had on our 5-year forecast, what the budget was, to what our actuals are.
Is this where you want me?
So, yeah, if you want to scroll up to, you went real quick, I'm sorry. Let's see, okay. Okay, so this one here.
This one?
Yeah, so this shows what I estimated our revenues to be, and on the 5-year forecast, and then what we've actually received through May 31st. I do a cash forecast to look at when we're going to receive those monies, and I expected us to receive 97.11%, which is the target percentage. We actually received 97.72. So it's less than 1% difference, and it's actually to the good, so that's always better. Then if you look at the bottom, those are the expenditures as outlined in the 5-year and on our budget. So if you could scroll for me. I expected us to have spent 92.08% of our budget by now, and we've spent 91.1%. Just want to make sure that people are aware that we are monitoring the budget, that we are making sure that things in cost are in line with what we expected them to be. And if there's anything that's too out of whack, we try to go back and figure out why that happened, and if we don't already know, most cases we already know, and then make adjustments as necessary. And if you want to scroll down to the charts, I will work with IT and Mr. Watson to get these out on the treasurer's portion of the website as well. This is where our money comes from. Right now, we've collected $14,796,000, and then, so, you know, sort of hard doing it from this way. So it shows how much of our money comes from the state and how much of it comes from local resources. And then if you go to the next bar chart, that is what shows you just a depiction of that original sheet that I went through. Is that me? Sorry. Where 97.11 is the benchmark, and we've actually received 97.74, so we're doing better than we expected. Then, yeah, we can go to where the money goes. We've spent $14,339,554. And the bulk of that money, of course, is on salaries and benefits. It's much less than most districts, but we know we have some purchase service contracts with the ESC. I know the district has been making strides in reducing the ESC contract and hiring in-house, so we'll see some shifts in that in the next year or so. And then the next graph is just a depiction of, I assumed we would spend 92.08, and we've spent 91.1, so we're doing good. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email me or call me, and I'll do my best to assist with any of those. And then we have the investment reports and the cash summary report as well. So then approval of donations. We had 3 donations. Bethel Elementary PTO for playground equipment of $14,375. The music boosters for the high school vocal program of $1489.34, and a Staples donation to the middle school, the approximate worth of which was $1,200. So I need your approval of that. Item H is approval of new accounts. We're lucky enough to have teachers write some grants and received from the Miami County Foundation or Tip City Foundation, high school art program 2740, and Hope Squad's trip to Camp Kern for those amounts. So we had to create individual accounts to track that. Item I is approval of transfers. When we have a check that's not been cashed and we can't locate it, after so many months, we put that in an unclaimed fund account. We have $122.71 that needs to be transferred from general fund to that unclaimed fund account. Then we are going to transfer from unclaimed funds to general fund $2,535, because after 5 years of being dormant, we're allowed to transfer it back to general fund. So I'm asking for your approval to make those transfers. Item J is student teacher stipends. Need your approval to pay those teachers. We received a check from Wright State, passing those dollars on to the teachers less the employer cost. So, item K is approval of temporary appropriations for 2022 and 23. We need to have your approval to spend money in the month of July and August as we work towards getting permanent approval So we want to keep paying people and keep paying our bills for July and August and most of September until the board approves permanent appropriations. Then L is approval of the amended certificate of available resources and appropriation resolution. It's a mouthful just to say I need you to approve our estimated revenues and our estimated budget. So appropriations would be your budget, and your available resources would be your revenues. So the APCOM report that's there shows that we are not over appropriating or outside of what our revenues project. So just so that you're aware that we are staying within what our revenue projections are. Letter M is approval of a classified administrator contract. It says 3-year, it should be 2-year contract for Amy Mathis, Assistant Treasurer for 22-23, 23-24. Letter N is approval of Miami County ESC for 22-23. O is approval of the WOCO contract for Emis Coordinator Services for 22, 23, and 23, 24. And it's been stated earlier, it's $30,000 a year to sort of go through our data with a fine-tooth comb and work with me and whomever is the new Emis person to clean up the data. We've been, just to make sure that we get every dollar that's due the district. Emis is far more complicated than people think. It's not just a matter of, putting data in the system. It's far more complicated than that. There are certain flags that have to be adjusted and things that have to be monitored on a regular basis. I don't know everything about the student side of Emis. I'll openly admit that. So we'll have to work with someone to get us up to par where we need to be. I know there's been a lot of talk, but I don't know where Ms. Reese got her $45,000, but I'd be interested in finding out where she got that number. So, Q, motion to, okay, so then that's all I have.
All right, can I have a motion to place the items from the treasurer's report on the consent calendar? Thank you, Mrs. France. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Discussion?
Yes, first item, probably the only item here. Letter J, the student teacher stipends. Just want, in case there's any confusion out in the audience or on YouTube, that this money does not go to the people that are actually student teaching, but to the teachers who are supervising them, to the Bethel employees that are supervising them, and not to the college students.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board? I would just like to thank Mrs. Hageman for all her work. This is a tremendous amount of work to do every month, and along with the building project. So I just would like to thank her for all her time and effort in trying to keep us in compliance. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
I need a motion to adopt the consent calendar with items from the treasurer's report.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there any further discussion? Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Treasurer discussion.
Okay. We had some technical difficulties the last couple board meetings, and I apologize for that. And I know we didn't have this presentation. Apparently, it wasn't showing during the time that I gave it. So I wanted to put it back out on this agenda so that everyone could see the presentation. And if I will also put it on the treasurer's website with Jacob's help up there. There are a lot of assumptions that we have to make when we look at revenues and budgets. I don't want to go through the whole presentation again, but there's a biennium budget that's approved by our legislators, and we have 3 that will be inclusive in this 5-year forecast. The one that we are currently in, which is for 21, 22, 22, 23, and then we have 24, 25, and then 26. So it's impossible to know what's going to happen 5 years out, but we do our best with what we know to be the case today. And as we all know, inflation's jumped up. If the Fair School Funding Plan is not fully implemented as proposed within 6 years, that's going to have a significant impact on the district. I have it frozen at 33%, which is what's in the current biennium budget. So if the next biennium budget says, hey, we're going to go ahead and move forward with that implementation, phasing it in, it's going to look better for us because we're going to have additional revenues coming in. If they freeze it where it's at, this is what it's going to look like for at least the next 2 years as far as revenues, hopefully, and then we go forward from there. So it's very important that we keep an eye on that because we don't want to be capped. You guys were capped for a long, long time with a lot of student growth, and you lost out on $2 to $3 million worth of state funding that you should have received, and you weren't alone. A lot of districts were in that boat. So if we continue to look at the enrollment growth that we have, we need to make sure that we keep that fair funding plan in place and that we're getting the funding for the kids that are coming here. So I just go through and explain all my revenue assumptions as well as my expenses. So I had already assumed 2 new administrators in the forecast for the expenditures because we knew we were going to need at least another Emis person and at least transportation and or principal. So that was already in there, and I knew, as I stated previously, Gail did a fabulous job, and she was Bethel true and true, and I think that's why, we're looking at how that salary is comparable to what we need to pay now. So this shows what my assumptions are as far as expenditures are concerned, what is and is not included, and we'll go from there. I think the bulk of your hiring has been on teachers, which is where you need to be because you want to keep class sizes smaller. So,
and I'll point out if you have financial questions, again, Mrs. Hageman has put her email in here, hagemant@blsk12.org. Hageman is H-A-G-E-M-A-N-T, and then her first name is Tina T. So, all right. Thank you, Mrs. Hageman.
Part of that special meeting, we also talked about federal programs, and I think it's important to point out that we get a lot of money from federal grants now. Last year was our first year ever having a single audit, which means if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, you must have a single audit, and the auditors come in and perform a single audit on 1 or 2 of your federal programs, which they did for fiscal year 21. I listed out all of our funds. If you look at your cash summaries or any of the reports, you're going to see everything on fund level. Every fund that starts with a 5 is a federal fund. It's a 500 fund, it's a federal fund. The only exception to that right now is your 006, which is food service, nutrition services. Those are always considered federal funds. So I went through each one of our programs for everybody, and let's see.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. And what our federal program procurement requirements are. These are federal programs, so they have their own procurement requirements. So that outlines everything from sealed bids to fixed proposals, non-competitive procurement, and ESCs. We have a non-competitive agreement with both our ESCs, the Miami County and the Montgomery County ESC. Yeah, that's just the food service, and we have to follow the federal procurement requirements. Our anticipated spend was about $325,000. I think we keep our costs down because most of our employees in that department are half-time, so it really works out for us. And then we've got our ESSER money. I would like to create like a grant committee and have people sit down and talk about how we're going to spend our ESSER dollars. I'm certainly not the end-all be-all to make that decision. We have $461,000 and some change available to us this year, and we'll have $923,000 available to us next year. One of the things I'd like to do is to have a grant committee, and maybe with the new superintendent, we can move that forward. But this outlines all of the monies that we have received for this year, for 22-23, in each of our, if you want to just go to the last slide, I think. So welcome to look at that, or the one before it.
Sorry.
I think our total, yeah, $991,483 is our total in federal funding for this year. So if we spend every dime, we're going to be on another single audit, which is what I told the auditors. So I'm assuming fiscal year 22 will be a single audit. I'm not sure about 23, but considering that we have $923,000 possible dollars in ESSER, and how we might be able to use that moving forward. So we could shift some of the cost from general fund, but we have to abide by all federal guidelines, so we just need to be careful. So fiscal year 22 was 991, which is this year 483, and I'm assuming we'll have more to come in 22-23, fiscal year 22-23, next school year.
Thank you for going through both of those again, Mrs. Hageman. I asked her to do that. I know it's extra work, but I really think it's important. First of all, this is one of the best presentations on federal grants I've seen in my 10 or so years in the district. No one's ever put one together. I'm going to pick on Mr. Gordon Wells. Most of you guys know him. He came up to me and said, so what's the cost of all this stuff? And this presentation shows if we were to not follow federal law or federal statute, we're putting almost $1 million at risk. So I just want to mention that, and that doesn't include our food service fund. So I just want to mention that that's one of the reasons I wanted her to show this presentation. That's a lot of money to lose. So we will move on. All right, do you want to switch places with me?
Oh,
Mrs. Hageman's going to drive while I read. Superintendent's items tonight. Item A, the following 10 employees are being recommended for contract renewals effective school year 22-23. Their immediate supervisor has evaluated each of these individuals, and a 2-year contract follows ORC language for years of contract length to be issued. Okay. Item B, administrator contract for Cassandra Schock, Young Fives, kindergarten, first grade principal, and K-12 gifted coordinator. As I mentioned previously, bringing the gifted coordinator in-house will save approximately $10,000, and that Mrs. Schock will be earning an additional $2,100 for taking on the gifted coordinator role along with all her other duties. The net savings to the district is $7,900. The district will not be looking at an assistant principal at this time. Rather, her duties are consistent with that of a principal, and hence the recommendation. Classified staff item C, Ashley Celesti, classroom aide. This is an additional aide position for school year 22-23 because of the number of incoming kindergarten students that are joining us on IEPs for next year from preschool. Megan Houston will also be joining us as an additional aide for kindergarten for school year 22-23 to support our special education population as well. Both positions will be hired as classroom aides to give us the flexibility to help in a number of areas, and will be hired through Bethel. And if any of these people are in the audience, because I don't know every single person, please stand when I read your name. Okay, the next one, certified staff, Rebecca Richardson, will be joining us as an elementary intervention specialist. This position will be transitioning from the ESC to Bethel for school year 22-23. Mrs. Richardson has a BA in PK to 4 and K through 8 special education from Clarion University. From 2018 to 2021, she taught at Madison County School District in Madison, Mississippi as a special education teacher in grades K through 2. Because of her husband's job relocation to Ohio, she most recently taught at Dayton Public Schools as an intervention specialist for grades 4 through 6 during the 21-22 school year. Megan Powell will be joining us as a high school fine arts teacher for school year 22 to 23. Ms. Powell received a BA in studio art in 2013 from The Ohio State University, her post-baccalaureate licensure from the University of Dayton in 2020, and an MS in interdisciplinary education studies in 2021 from the University of Dayton. Professionally, she has served as a part-time art educator at Beaver Creek High School from 2020 to present, and has also served as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Dayton as well. Ms. Hannah Johnston will be joining Bethel Local Schools for the 2022-23 school year as a 5th grade teacher. Ms. Johnston is a graduate of Cedarville University, 2020, with a BA in early childhood education. From 2020 to 2021, she was a 1st grade teacher at Dayton Christian Elementary, and from 2021 to 22 was a 4th grade teacher at Fairborn Intermediate School. In addition to her 2 years of classroom experience, she has also been provided training in CPR, AED, and first aid, is medication administration certified, and also is crisis prevention certified. The following individuals will be joining Bethel Elementary next year in 1st grade. Sarah Jeffers Bird has 12 total years of experience, with 9 of those years being in 1st grade. She is coming to us from Pathway School of Discovery and previously taught at Imagine Kleppinger Community School. Sarah has extensive experience with diverse student groups and needs, particularly ELL students, which will serve us well. She has been the lead 1st grade teacher on her current team for several years and earned her MA in literacy from Wright State. She is currently learning and researching more about the science of reading, which we are excited about given our current ELA curriculum and focus. We look forward to her joining us for the 22-23 school year. Rachel Elam recently completed her student teaching with Mrs. Novelino this school year. Rachel has a true passion for teaching and dedication to her continual growth as an educator. Her lesson delivery, classroom management, and professional relationships with colleagues well extended beyond the scope of a brand new teacher. She is currently working on emerging readers' professional development and plans to earn her MA in the science of reading. Rachel has shown dedication to Bethel Local Schools through her work as a levy committee chair, varsity JV cheerleading coach, marching band flag advisor, and high school musical dance choreographer. We are truly thrilled to have her join us for the 22-23 school year. And Mr. Ferks writes, thank you to Mrs. Novelino, Mrs. Hamlin, and Mrs. Strobridge, who participated in the interview process and selection of candidates. And Mrs. Elam is with us this evening. We have found our 4th grade teacher. Paige Pullman has 5 years of experience. Most recently, she taught 1st grade at Holy Angels Catholic School in Sydney, Ohio. Her license is in early childhood education with a 4.5 endorsement. In addition, Mrs. Pullman has an intervention specialist license. Ms. Pullman has had experiences in resource rooms and has taught grades 1st through 8th at various points in her career. We believe that her experiences as an intervention specialist will help her differentiate lessons in her 4th grade class to allow all of her students to be successful. We are excited to see the energy and passion that she will bring to our 4th grade team. Please welcome Paige to the Hive, and leave that screen up for a moment. For those of you who have this yellow sheet, Mrs. Donna Beam had brought this up at the work session. We have a person on here who is at step 0 and step 2 and earning the same salary. If you look at the salary schedule, this is something approved between the board and the Bethel Education Association. The treasurer's office has to follow this document. If you look, step 0 with the BS for both step 0 and step 2 is $40,821. You can go through and check all these people, but they are at place for the 22-23 on the schedule. I just wanted to explain, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of that who may not be teachers or administrators, so I just wanted to point that out. Nobody's trying to pull a fast one or hide anything. This is how the system works, and once in a while you hear a story of a cook or an aide who hasn't been placed on the salary schedule, and the auditor goes back for them for tens of thousands of dollars. So it's not a joke, it's a contract, and it has to be followed. So there's no funny business going on. That's what we use to place our teachers on the salary schedule. Okay. Resignations, item E. Brooke Hoblet has recently been hired as a second grade teacher at the Troy City Schools for the 22 to 23 school year. She did an excellent job as one of our Title I teachers this year. We wish her the very best in her future endeavors and thank her for her service to the students of Bethel Local Schools. Allison Sherrick has recently been hired as a middle school teacher at Cedarville Local Schools. This position is significantly closer to where she resides, and we wish her the very best in her future endeavors and thank her for her service to the students of Bethel Local Schools. Melissa Lakazi has recently been accepted to the Ohio State University to pursue a full-time doctoral program. OSU does not allow for any additional obligations or employment during her time as a student. We also wish her the very best in her future endeavors and thank her for her service to the students of Bethel Local Schools. Item F, Drew Stitzel. Drew is a recent graduate of Bethel Local Schools, class of 2022. He is finishing his training and will be working as a correctional officer at the Miami County Jail. We wish Drew the very best in the next chapter of his life and have enjoyed having him as a student worker in our maintenance department. And I told him when I saw him, he wrote one of the most humorous resignation letters that I've read in a while. Item G, leave of absence for FMLA for Madison Eggenschweller and Samantha Stevens for September 26th to November 9th, 2022, that's for Madison, and November 16th to January 16th, 2023 for Ms. Stevens. We wish these two the very best during their upcoming leaves of absence. Degree status change, item H, for high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Molly Wiedemann, from MA plus 15 to MA plus 30, effective August 19th, 2022. Congratulations to Mrs. Wiedemann for her continued efforts in the classroom to improve her knowledge in the field. Item I, student summer workers. Nolan Furstenberger and Jace Hauk will be joining our summer cleaning crew. We appreciate their willingness to work for the district this summer and hope it provides valuable work experience for each of them. We have review of supplemental positions: cross-country volunteer Brian Furstenberger, football volunteer Chad Swanson, football volunteer Chris Hawk, football volunteer Paul, or he goes by Chet Adkins, and 8th grade girls basketball coach Kim Adams. Excuse me. Item K, resignation of 8th grade volleyball coach Ms. Caroline Lawson. I spoke with Ms. Lawson at the staff appreciation luncheon, and she mentioned working towards furthering her master's degree, so wishing her continued success on that. Item L, Bethel Local School Gifted Education Plan for school year 22-23. This is an annual approval for how we will provide these services to the students in our district. All questions should be directed to Ms. Cassie Schock, our PK1 principal, gifted coordinator for Bethel Local Schools. Superintendent staff updates. Okay, item A, I know these aren't on the agenda, but I asked Mrs. Hageman not to put them on because I wasn't sure how many I'd have. Mindy Campbell will be a voluntary internal transfer to 5th grade for school year 22 to 23. She will be replacing Allison Sherrick, who resigned to go to Cedarville Local School. Zoe Thompson Gagnon will be a voluntary internal transfer to Title I reading for school year 22-23. She will be replacing Brooke Hoblet, who resigned to go to Troy City Schools. Personnel still outstanding. I believe there is a high school English AP teacher position. There is a middle school teaching position that is not yet posted, but we know of a person who will be resigning. A weight room coordinator that's in process. We now have an 8th grade volleyball coach open. We're looking for an Emis data entry person, and we can always use additional substitute teachers and substitute bus drivers. And I know Mr. Watson is going to be working on some publicity for the Emis position, the data entry position, and also for substitute bus drivers and teachers. So thank you, Mr. Watson. I would like to thank Mrs. Della Felton and the superintendent staff for providing such a great end-of-year staff appreciation luncheon. Both Bob Shadowins and Gail Rhodes were recognized as retirees, and we saw some wonderful slideshows and heard many grateful comments. Standing ovations were given to both retirees and to Mr. Justin Firks for his service to the district. To close out the superintendent items, I would also like to read Mr. Firks' letter of resignation and the list of accomplishments he achieved in his time here. May 19th, 2022. Dear Bethel Board of Education, please accept this letter as my formal resignation from Bethel Local Schools, effective at the end of my current contract year. It has been a priority over the last 7 years as a superintendent of schools to make decisions that are in the best interest of students and staff. Being a superintendent historically has been a profession of sacrifice. However, sacrificing health, family, dignity, and your professional reputation should not be part of this job. Because of this, I am submitting this letter of resignation that will be effective July 31st, 2022. I wish the administrative team and the classified and certified staff continued success as they chart a path of high academic outcomes for all of the students of Bethel local schools. The district has experienced much success over the last 3 years, and I am proud of our accomplishments academically, with facilities, financially, and with the mending of relationships between the staff and the administrative team during my tenure. I look forward to seeing the board choose a new superintendent that can share their vision for the future of Bethel local schools, and wish you luck during the search process. In education, Justin Firks. Mr. Firks' accomplishments: 1, created a district strategic plan. 2, created a district master facility plan involving much community input. 3, implemented final forms in the district and eliminated many of the paper back-to-school forms. 4, standardizing grading and progress book. Number 5, hired a communications director and standardized communication protocols. Our online communication has been greatly improved, and Mr. Watson will release a back-to-school newsletter in July. 6, created a chain of command document so people knew who to contact. 7, passage of income tax levy renewal in fall of 2021. That's the highest, 66% passage rate in district history. 8, accepted participation in the OFCC construction project in 2020, and by delaying until September of 2020, increased our state share of the project from 74% to 80%, which earned the district a net cash flow savings of $3 million. 9, saved the district costs by bringing custodial services in-house. 10, saved costs by eliminating board works and converting to board docs. 11, saved the district costs by eliminating Power School. 12, saved costs by converting staff positions from ESC to direct hire, saving a 4 to 5% overhead administrative cost. 13, took advantage of ODE bus purchase grant for over $50,000. 14, took advantage of an ODE school security grant, approximately $40,000 to purchase security film. 15, secured funding through grants for the 2nd and 7th reading program where high school athletes read to 2nd graders. 16, created a Young Fives kindergarten program. 17, rebuilt trust with our teachers and staff. 18, created a labor management team in 2019. 19, implemented a new athletic department dedicated website. 20, adopted new curriculum. Wit and Wisdom was a K-8 curriculum early in his superintendency, and then this year it was the mathematics curriculum K through 12. 21, created school branding guidelines. 22, selection of Garmin Miller as architectural firm and Peterson Construction as construction manager to manage our building project. 23, in 2020, he managed the process to get additional modulars on campus to aid with our growth needs. 24, in 2021, purchased 2 vans to help with transportation needs. 25, saved parents costs by reducing middle school and high school athletic participation fees by 50%. 26, saved parents costs by reducing school lunch fees. 27, hired consulting services through epcschools.org to manage our food service ordering and reporting. 28, put district-wide guidelines together and provided regular updates for COVID-19, and let's hope those are behind us. 29, reviewed all our administrative staff yearly. 30, handled student discipline hearings. 31, during Mr. Firk's tenure, Bethel High School received a Purple Star Award for its support of military families. 32, further, Bethel High School was the highest ranked school in Miami County according to U.S. News and World Reports. And to get this honor, credit is also due to the elementary, middle school, and district staff besides the high school. 33, provided standardization and held administrators accountable on hiring of staff and coaches. And by that I mean getting their BCI FBI checks or their pupil activity permits before they come to the board. 34, worked with the Miami County ESC to provide board training for board members. 35, held summer grill outs for staff, ice cream truck for back to school week, and held staff appreciation luncheons. 36, worked with the SRO and Sheriff's Office on Safety Town program. The first year it was implemented was July 2019. 37, implemented job descriptions for each staff position at Bethel. 38, implemented a virtual guidance office, making college and career information more accessible, and of course that was accomplished by Mrs. Wiedemann and Mrs. Burrell. I don't want to misplace recognition, but he was allowed them to do that. Number 39, in 2021, negotiated current BEA contract, and we settled in April, which in my years in the district, I think is the earliest in my several years in the district, 20 years I've been in this district. Formed an elementary building leadership team who was integrally involved in the building design. Number 41, allowed student workers to be hired for maintenance and IT positions both during school year and the summer, and we hired 2 this evening. Number 42, allowed current staff to be hired during summer months to help with ongoing maintenance and custodial needs. 43, implemented an information technology rotation for replacing Chromebooks. 44, along with the prior treasurer, refinanced the bond issue, which saved our district over $3 million. Number 45, established graduation at Hobart Arena, where seating was not limited and there was ample parking. 46, interfaced with businesses and community on raising funds for the athletic stadium project, and I believe over $600,000 has been promised at present. Number 47, led the efforts for our school district to build a $32.5 million K-5 building and athletic complex at no additional cost to taxpayers. All right, I think I forgot to call the roll after I finished. I got in a hurry. All right, so anyways, back to superintendent's items to vote on. May I have a motion to put those items on the consent calendar, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there questions on any of the superintendent items?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for missing graduation. 34 years, this is the second one that I've had to miss. So I'm glad that everything went well. This is in regard to item D. This statement is in regard to the employment of my daughter-in-law, Mrs. Rachel Elam. Board Policy 3120 states, relatives of board members may be employed by the board, provided a member of the board does not participate in any way in the discussion or vote on the employment when a conflict of interest is involved. So in researching nepotism in state government, of which education is a part, I was directed to the Ohio Ethics Commission Frequently Asked Questions statement. The Ohio Ethics Commission was formed in 1973. It creates ethical standards for public officials and employees. Page 2, paragraph 3 states, "Who is my family?" For purposes of the Ohio Ethics Law, a family member includes the following regardless of where they live: spouse, children, stepchildren, whether dependent or not, siblings, parents and step-parents, grandparents and grandchildren. Family member also includes any other person related by blood or by marriage, for example, cousins, aunts, uncles, in-laws, nieces, nephews, etc., if that person resides in the same household as the public official or public employee. My address is 7220 Ross Road. Rachel, what's your address? Thank you. By definition then, in this matter, according to the Ohio Ethics Commission, Mrs. Elam is not a member of my family. And for our purposes here tonight, with the approval of our board attorney, and the other board members can see his statement there on the first 2 pages of the handout I gave you, I may contribute to this discussion, and I will be voting on this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
I would like to
Oh,
add
I'm sorry.
one
Sure.
thing. I do appreciate this, Danny. I do appreciate this, what you put together here for all of us. And I know that we had planned the agenda together along with Tina this week, and I think I've tried to communicate this before, and out of respect for the board, we had discussed what would be on the agenda. This was a surprise. Again, this was dropped in my lap tonight.
What was the surprise?
What Danny handed me, I had no, I didn't get to read through this. This was just tonight, reading it now. And this is what, how many pages? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. Your notes that you'd put together again about Mr. Firks, again, wasn't made aware that that was going to be part of the agenda this evening, and we had discussed everything on the agenda beforehand. So I'm asking out of respect for the entire board that, you know, we would have time to look over things like this, Danny, for you. And for you, if you're going to do some kind of a recognition, just again, out of courtesy and respect, that we would be made aware. So tired of the surprise resolutions that get dropped in our lap. I'm tired of the things that come last minute that are added to the agenda. And I'm not, you know, targeting any one person here, but it's become a pattern. And, you know, for those of us that work, for those of us that, you know, we're not checking our email an hour or two beforehand, it's, again, emphasizing the respect to the board of having the time to look over things like this and this not being all these surprises. So that's what I would like to say there.
I would point out the I would point out the date on Mr. Pogorski's letter, June the 10th, last Friday. I would also point out that the final 2 pages, I just read the important part of what was on the FAQ. So that it's just a couple of paragraphs that go to the
Right,
on the,
and I
on
do
the final 2
appreciate the
pages.
courtesy of you sharing this with us. It's just, you gave it to us tonight. I didn't know this was coming, didn't even know this was going to be part of a discussion, or that something that was even on your mind as for consideration. So that's.
Well, I'm just explaining why I'm able to vote on this tonight.
Right. Yeah, but again, I didn't know that this was an issue until tonight, that, you know, you were looking to vote or not vote.
Well, it was brought up at the last meeting that aspersions of nepotism were made at the last work session.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to clear it up.
Right, and I appreciate that. Just for future, if maybe beforehand or something, so we have a little bit more time to know what, because I'm like, what is this? You know, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Ferrance, and thank you, Mr. Elam, for clarifying the situation. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
I forgot to turn myself back on, sorry. Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes. Now we need a motion to adopt the consent calendar with items from the superintendent's report. May I have a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there any further discussion? Thank you. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Should we switch sleeves? I apologize. I can't read everything and drive at the same time. It's kind of like, what, touch your head and pat your belly? I'm not one of those people for sure. All right. I've already done superintendent updates. Guess what? We are ready for the hearing of the BEA. Mrs. Henry and Mrs. Brewer.
All right, I would like to congratulate the following students for earning the Mrs. Jody Hockett Spears Memorial Scholarship at the Senior Awards Night. Leah Schaffner, who will attend Illinois Technical University in Chicago, and Eleanor Patton, who will attend Grove City College in Grove City, Pennsylvania, received the scholarship. They both received a $500 scholarship.
Great.
So congrats to them. I also wanted to congratulate the 113 graduates of the class of 2022, as well as the 150 graduates of kindergarten and everyone in between. It was a good school year, and hopefully they're all relaxing in this hot, hot, hot sun. Even though we are on spring break, our teachers are still working. Did I say spring? summer break. Our teachers are still working hard to improve upon next year, from attending college classes, doing professional development, sitting in on interviews, and even attending board meetings. So we are still working toward making 2022-2023 an even better school year. So thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Brewer. All right, Board of Education discussion and action items. The Facilities Committee met tonight. We discussed all the topics on this list. We will be discussing further and calling for a vote the AES moving electrical lines. The poles along 201 need moved. There's one actually that was put in the middle of the incoming driveway to the new K-5 building. So that one will be shifted and the others will be moved back so we can widen Route 201. Parking lot resurfacing, and then we will be voting on bathroom partitions for K-5 building and discussing that. Let me see where I'm at here. Okay. So the relocation of poles for road widening, the cost is $114,387.90. Can I have a motion for that?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there any discussion? Okay, this will be coming out of our permanent improvement fund. Mrs. Hageman has said there is enough in our inside mills to pay for this project. If there's no further discussion, Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mrs. Franz?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Resurfacing the parking lot, Mr. Todd Bird, our maintenance director, has advised several things for the parking lot to patch the cracks, to resurface, and then that includes striping as well. The cost of that is $37,800. There were 3 quotes received. Can I have a motion for that item?
I can motion that to put that on the.
Thank you, Mrs. France. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there discussion? Okay, Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'll say yes.
Mrs. Franz?
I'm going to vote no.
Motion passes 3-1. The next item, there was some spirited conversation about the bathroom partitions. And what this is in our new K-5 building. This would allow for privacy where you couldn't peek between the stall doors. It would lower the length of the stall to 4 to 6 inches above the floor and raise the height to, I believe, 66 inches, ensuring better privacy. Is there a motion to place for this agenda item?
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
The quote is only good until June 22nd.
June 22nd, right.
So if you table it, would you like it placed back on the agenda when we have our special meeting?
I think that would be best, yes.
Okay.
There's some other information I'd like to see collected yet, and I would like to work with Peterson to see if we can do that. Based on our community feedback, I think there's another piece of information I know I would like to see collected yet.
Okay, is there a second to have the motion tabled?
I could second that.
Okay, a vote to table this agenda item is in order. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll on the motion to table this item?
Mrs. Sebastian? Mrs. Sebastian?
No.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mrs. France.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-1. Okay. The next item up for discussion is a resolution to rename the Loop Road the Gale Roads Road. And I'll read the resolution. Whereas one of our employees, Gale Rhodes, is retiring after 35 years of service, and whereas Mrs. Rhodes throughout her career served in multiple professional capacities with dignity and merit, wholeheartedly going above and beyond the call, and whereas this board has determined to provide a lasting honor dedicated to Mrs. Rhodes for her years of outstanding service to our district and community, now therefore be it resolved that the South Loop Road on our school campus be named and known as the Gale Rhodes Road. Be it further resolved that proper signage be erected acknowledging the name to users of the loop. May I have a motion for that resolution, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. Is there any discussion?
Well deserved.
Yes, very well deserved. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. France?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is discussion on creation of the business manager position. I will start since I have something prepared. Why do I think we need a business manager? Because we need to beef up our administrative staff, or some of our other administrators are going to leave. Gale Rhodes did a tremendous job, but Emis coordinator, transportation director, and helping out in a host of other areas means we will need more than one person to replace her. Right now, our treasurer's office is operating with the same 3 people we had 10 years ago, but we have double the students, and we are doing a building project. Our treasurer has twice as much on her plate that she can get done. Further, a purchasing operations manager will help with public records requests. Our maintenance director, Mr. Todd Bird, is swamped with projects, and that will continue for the foreseeable future. Having someone who can offload the quotes, RFPs, and other purchasing obligations will help him focus on his talents, which are managing the people and fixing things. I've known Todd for several years, and he has always commended me on my computer and spreadsheet skills. But that's not our maintenance director's strength, no offense, Todd. Further, we have a $32.5 million building project. Let's imagine for a minute people are stretched thin and an invoice gets approved that shouldn't. Given the volume of dollars involved, I want an individual with an eagle eye watching every payment with this project. An operations or purchasing or business manager can do that. Lastly, if you would take a look at this green sheet, our per pupil expense of our cost of educating our students, that was put together this fall by Mrs. Tina Hageman when we were doing the levies. I'm trying to pull it up. There we go. You'll notice Bethel spends $2,000 less per pupil than any other district, public school district in Miami County. Adding a purchasing or business manager, let's assume it's $90,000 or $100,000. I don't know what the final cost is going to be. That's going to add $50 to this chart. That still puts us $1,950 below what any other area school does. To me, this position gives us the ability to handle much of our complexity with a building project and growth, and give our administrative staff the support they need to thrive and do well. I'm asking that we post the position and see if there are any qualified applicants who apply. Our interim superintendent would be involved in this process, and eventually management would transfer from the board to the superintendent. Thank you, and if someone else has comments, I'd love to hear them.
Laura, you'll remember, and other former board members will remember, that about 4 years ago, Mrs. Virginia Potter predicted back then that when Gale Rhodes retired, when Gale Rhodes eventually would retire, that we would need 2 people to handle her spot. She also mentioned that when Lynn Sarah would retire, we would need 2 people for her spot. We don't have 2 people for hers, but we definitely have the need for at least 2 people to take Gale's place. Again, that's a great point that our student population has doubled in in the last year.
In the last 10 years, yes.
I'm sorry, in the last 10 years, thank you. And it doesn't hurt to post a position and see what we can find.
And yeah, we're just asking that the position be posted. I know Mrs. France had mentioned earlier wanting a job description, so I think that we would need to create a job description, and hopefully Tina will have better success with the Montgomery County ESC. My real concern, though, Board, is that we are going to lose capable and qualified administrators. So.
I would just like to add that I would prefer to wait until we have interviewed our interim candidates to see what kind of experience that they have, and to see if they might have a willingness to help us in the arena of, specifically with the building project. I know we're already contracting for at least a year for services to help us with training with Emis, and then we may or may not have an internal candidate yet to talk to that's willing to be trained with that. I know in bringing a business manager on, one of the reasons was that they could possibly help with Emis, but they would still have to be trained, because we're more than likely not going to be bringing on a business manager with Emis experience. That would be great, but I doubt that's going to be the case. With transportation, again, I think we should take a look and see if that's something that an interim superintendent has the willingness to help with, or maybe has the experience already there, could help with training our assistant principal, who's also been hired to take on that transportation. So my thought is, let's wait and see, again, what kind of interim superintendent candidates that we get, and then go from there.
My concern is if we wait till July, all the competent, qualified people will already have been hired. People don't look for jobs in July in education. They're already looking. I don't even know if we'll get anybody posting it now, quite frankly.
Oh, and I did forget to add one more thing. We may have some internal candidates that are willing to take on the building construction for the summer, and I think that's something that we need to explore. Need to at least put that out there to see if we want to give them a stipend and give them the opportunity to take some of those responsibilities on.
And how do you propose we get some of the duties off Mr. Bird's plate and Mrs. Hageman's plate?
Yes, this is the first that this has been mentioned.
The first that what has been mentioned?
That someone's interested in being a construction manager for the summer.
I'm not saying anyone is. I'm saying let's ask and see. Yeah, I'm proposing, let's see if there's an internal candidate that might be interested. I'm not saying there is. There may not be.
Well, I think, as I've explained to many people, our needs go beyond the building project. This community, I know, is very conscious of what we spend in administrative cost, but I'm going to tell you, as much as we've grown, we haven't doubled our administration, contrary to what people may believe. And I'm very concerned about the ability of this building to run smoothly. I think you're going to have people leave. So.
We've all, in connection with this building, there was a gentleman that was, can't remember what his title was, owner's rep, that was employed here, correct?
Correct.
During this, for like $86,000, something like that a year. And Mr. Ferks has been doing this for the last 2 years, in addition to his superintendent's duties.
Mrs. Donahue, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I'm still considering everything, and I definitely want to make sure that Tina has what she needs. As she said, she's got some big tasks ahead of her. I know we have the construction going on. I do like the idea of running through, making sure any internal candidate who might be interested in that has the opportunity to look at that. I also think it's going to have to be somebody who can work with the interim superintendent as well, so.
Correct, and I think when I spoke, I said the idea would be that the interim superintendent would be involved with hiring this person. We would not do this solo. Yeah.
The only concern with that is if that person isn't brought on until the beginning of August, then it kind of defeats what you said about anybody being available before that.
I don't think even if we post tomorrow that we'll have a decision made till mid to late July and start date August. If they put 2 weeks notice in, I mean, realistically, even if you post soon, you're not going to have that position hired that quickly. And my concern is if you wait to post it till July, when's somebody going to start? September, October, or are you even going to have any candidates? If we hire the position, they do have to have the credential of business manager, purchasing manager, but I would really surely like to at least put a posting out and see who we get. Just because we put a posting out does not mean we have to hire, because we may get 3 people back that aren't who we need. I'd like to see what's out there. I mean, does that hurt? I guess my question may be for you, Jessica, and Danny and Natalie, does it hurt us to put a posting out and then do nothing with it?
I don't believe it hurts us at all to put a posting out.
I mean, because like I said, we may get nobody. I hate to be pessimistic, but I really don't know what to expect. I don't know how many purchasing or operations managers there are out there. And Tina has mentioned, I believe that she would like to get someone with experience if possible, because we want somebody coming in with that knowledge to train, not the other way around. So I don't know for the salary we would plan to offer if somebody would be willing to do that. We in our district are very frugal, and that's a credit to us, but it makes attracting top candidates challenging. I'll be quite honest.
I think we need a job description before we
Yes.
can even post it, so.
Yep. Okay. Mrs.
Absolutely.
Hageman, do you think you can get a job description together? And maybe we can revisit this and the other item at the meeting on the 22nd? I don't think I stated that. The meeting that we tabled, the motion that we tabled, we'll bring that up. And we can also bring this up at the special meeting, if that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
Would that be acceptable?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, consensus, yay. All right. We are to number 12, guidelines for addressing and hearing the board. A motion? There's no motion, it was just discussion. This item did not have a motion because we weren't sure what we were doing. It was just open. All right. I'm ready to hear from people of the public. The first person I have is Mrs. Carolyn Wright.
Hello, thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to address the board again. As I stated at our last meeting, I intend to be here at every meeting to represent the voices of people who disagree with the hateful, bigoted comments being made in our community. As a white, middle-class, middle-aged, cisgender woman, I stand here to say to Bethel community that LGBTQ people in our community are welcome, they are safe, they are valued, and they are entitled to a public education in which they are able to fully participate safely. I hear a lot of talk about safety of children, and yet everything I have heard, everything I have read on social media is a direct attack on the most vulnerable students in our community. We know that LGBTQ youth are far more likely, 4 times more likely, to commit suicide, exactly because of the hateful, awful things that people are saying, the way that they are acting, the statements that are posted on social media. It is appalling to me as a lifelong Bethel resident, as a Bethel alumni, as a parent of 2 Bethel alumni, to believe that my community could be so full of hatred and rage. And so I intend to be here every month, every meeting, to remind people that 600 signatures is less than 5% the Bethel community. That's a tiny portion. There's a lot of people in this community who support the board, who support the policies, who recognize federal law means something, that dollars are attached to that, that benefits our community, that benefits our taxpayers, and that children can be safe even if they are different. And quite honestly, I'm just sickened at the tone and the rhetoric here. I'm sickened by the attitudes. I'm tired of hearing people make nasty comments. I'm tired of people questioning every decision, every comment. It's exhausting, and I commend the board, those of you who are willing to stick to your principles, to follow the law, and I want you to know that you are not alone. And I stand here representing a big chunk of the community, and I intend to be here every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Mrs. Beam.
It's hard for me to believe where the community is today. And I blame those changes began back in 2014 when Potter was hired. She came with a progressive agenda that continues to threaten the traditional values that once made Bethel a place where people were proud to live and that caused people moving to this region to say, that's where I want to raise my family. Since Potter came and since she left, the community has worked so hard to rebuild. We welcomed a new superintendent who we thought was with us for the long haul, for the right reasons. New board members, some of whom only appeared to place the needs of the students and staff and community above hidden agendas. But here we are still this day, fighting for what this community knows is right and what is best for all students and staff. The fear of retaliation used to keep many from speaking up. Others just aren't used to conflict on the level that we've seen since Potter came and gone. But especially in the past 6 months, the curtain has been pulled back to show much more going on than most of us had even suspected. Questionable decisions made in secrecy, out of control spending, backdoor deals, and a majority vote pushing agenda items with no consideration for the full consequences that our community, in and outside of school walls, would have to face. But here we are, again looking for a new superintendent, and again fighting to remove school board members who are not looking out for us and our values. 2 of them used to be where I am tonight, pleading for a return to traditional values that built this community. I'd like to know what happened to change these board members from being with us and now being against us. Bethel means house of God in Hebrew, and where we go from here, only God knows. Here's what I do know. The privacy and the safety of all Bethel students lies entirely in the determination of the community to defend them. We are nothing but determined. And since you brought up other couple of things, you said that at the work session that we had a malfunction with that. I think it was misquoted tonight, what some of the questions that were asked at the work session, because I was one of them that was asking them. I didn't say there was any funny business or anything like that going on when I asked for the step. I never heard of that. I just simply asked a question. I was not implying anything. So I don't appreciate being called out on that, for one thing. And then you read off all the accomplishments that Mr. Firks had done while he was here, 46, 47. Well, I would say to you, isn't that his job? So.
Thank you, Mrs. Beam. Mrs. Yates.
Thank you. For those of you who didn't stick around for the last time because you felt the need to walk out, I'll just tell you real quick about myself. My name's Amy Yates. My wife and I have lived here in Bethel for 20 years. We've raised 3 kids who all attended Bethel K through 8, and one that's still currently a student here in the high school. We chose the path as two women raising the children they chose to have, of being participants in the school, quietly as lesbians, but loudly as parents. I was on the PTO for many years. We helped coach our kids' teams. We were here to show the community of Bethel that there was nothing to be scared of. We didn't have a hidden agenda. We aren't trying to groom anyone. We are not trying to indoctrinate anyone. We are trying to raise our children just like you are. And that's why I felt finally the need to come forward, because in doing that, which I feel we did a great job, we have had many of teachers, community members, people we know are friends, people we weren't so sure were on our side, come up to us since the last meeting and thank us for speaking out. But who we have failed all this time are the students, the kids, and the community members who are on our side, who are also gay, lesbian, transgendered, by not standing up for them and speaking loud and proud for them as much as we could. So, as one of the previous speakers said, we're going to continue to show up here at these meetings every month and let you know that we're here. We're here to provide a safe space for those students who need our support. Being gay, being transgendered is not wrong. It's just who they are. And they need to hear that they are still loved and they are still supported despite this. And they need to know that this is not something that could be equated to other things. It is certainly not the same as saying, well, let me rephrase that. By allowing them to recognize who they are and supporting them for that is not the same thing as telling an anorexic to lose weight, because they are very different. Those are two totally different things. And the person who said that knows who I'm talking to. So anyways, I want to bring up one other thing. So the whole business manager thing, we'll actually talk about something that is of importance to this school. I think it's a great idea. I think waiting on an interim superintendent to find someone for that position would be a mistake, because an interim superintendent is just that, interim. And it sounds like this business manager position is something that's going to hopefully be more permanent. So to have a person in a permanent position overseeing such a project and helping our district would be a wise move. And again, waiting for an interim superintendent who, again, is not going to stick around. In fact, most of our superintendents are interims. Everybody knows that this small community is a stepping stone for superintendents. You'd be a fool to think otherwise. That's why they don't stay very long, because they're using it to further their careers. So, which is nothing wrong, because they come in with the right heart. They're wanting to help the students, they're wanting to build our community, but they're not from here and they're not going to stay around here. So I think you guys would be wise to post the position and to get someone hired, because again, that's someone that's going to be permanent to look over something that's very important, much more important than worrying about who's using the bathroom, and that is getting the new school built and keeping an eye on how dollars are spent. Happy Pride Month, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Yates. Ms. Ollinger? I'm sorry? I'll pass. Okay. Mr. Whalen? David?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I realize that this is really kind of beating the dead horse and everybody's tired of hearing about it. But on the subject of the gender roles of students, if we're going to try to teach the sexual males to be men and the sexual females to be women, we should probably go about that by leading by example. So I would think that any board member that is pushing in that direction should maybe get back in the kitchen. And if they wanted to really give their opinion, they would have their father, husband, oldest son give it for them, since we're going to go with those conservative values. On the subject that was brought up earlier about how we would pay for positions that come open, maybe a GoFundMe, instead of being used for some frivolous lawsuit, a Give, Send, Go, or whatever it's called, might be used to fill those positions instead. Do something positive with that energy instead of trying to bankrupt our school system. I would like to applaud the other board members on sticking to the law so we can continue to finance our school and educate our students, all of our students, including our gay, transgender, etc. I think a lot of the conservative parents would be surprised to find out how many of their kids are not as conservative as they think they are. And your kids are watching. They see how you feel about it. And I think if you want to continue to show the love like a parent should, you might want to be a little more open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Mrs. Sodders?
Hello, my name is Kelly Sodders. I'm just showing all of you guys, the board members, so you can see a sign, and even maybe if those of you guys on YouTube can see the sign of love that we had outside the school. We chose to stand by the highway as the buses and the school staff to come around, and it just talks about how all lives matter. The students, this is affecting them. So I think as parents, we have tried to shield them as best we can. I know my sons are being affected just from friends, etc. You know, friends that used to be able to come over just and spend the night. I tell you, we were a perfectly fine household to spend the night in on January 10th. But after that board meeting, after that moment, now we're no longer acceptable to allow that child to be in our household. Like, I just don't, it does affect them. So, you know, for the kids, we don't explain to them the why. We just say, you know, friends change, times change, middle school, high school, you know. It can be the age. But I know the reason, and I want you guys as the board members to know the reason. And I want the community to know that, like the previous speaker spoke about, how you as parents, how this is trickling down. Showing a sign like this got us flipped off by how many, mostly middle school and high school age children, your children, because we were out there saying, we love you and we support you. So, and I am disappointed, and, Ms. Franz, I am disappointed in you. I feel like you continue to push your own agenda and the agenda of what you believe in, or whatever group that you attach with believes in, but you're not really taking into consideration everybody. So I appreciate the board members, the rest of you who
Mrs. Sodders, you need to direct your comments to me. Thank you.
Then I appreciate all of the rest of the board members, all of you board members who are actually working toward and don't seem to push your own agendas and are listening and continue to I don't have any problems with Snickers. Some people talk about their Snickers or whatnot. I think emotion is good. I don't think as leaders you should hide maybe your opinions or thoughts. That doesn't mean you don't still listen to both sides just because you may, yeah, things can sting, but sometimes that sting is what actually opens our minds. I always take those stings, and I've had a lot of stings in this board meeting from people speaking. And I actually have researched and listened and really thought about those. So I just encourage anything that you guys do, continue to listen.
Thank you, Mrs. Sodders. Are there any other hearing of the public that we did not receive? Okay, will you please bring it up at this time?
Thank you. I'm Ken Bailey. I'll be 80 years old this year. My wife is here with me tonight. Our two children graduated from Bethel. 91, my daughter was here. 94, my son was here. So we've been here 50 years, and we've seen a lot of things happen at the school. Some of the things in the early 70s made the AP every week. The national news. That was the longest losing streak in the country. They lost 28 games in a row. Some of those were 92-0, 82-0. Small school. Not really enough kids to have a football team. They dropped the football team after those 3 or 4 years and couldn't find a coach, couldn't find a qualified coach. So we've had sometimes some challenges in the past. I think this is minor. I'm here tonight to support the board. I think we have 3 very highly qualified people. Danny, a lot of these awards here, you probably know where they came from. The president of the board has a master's in education, mathematics, is a Woodrow Wilson Fellow, and very other distinctions, a mathematics teacher. Being an engineer and a registered architect, mathematics is close to my heart. When I was very young, I was told I'd have to be a ditch digger, a pick and shovel person. I had a lot of problems reading. They didn't know. This is in the late 40s. I was told I wouldn't have to dig ditches. But I found out I was very good in mathematics. I got a slide rule, went to Ohio State, graduated in engineering college as an architect, registered engineer, registered operational engineer, and an architect. As an architect, I think some of these discussions are a good way to say it. You want to put petitions in kindergarten? As I understand this problem or concern, the puberty is in those students 13 to 17 years old, high school students. It's really not necessarily in the elementary school or in the middle school. Those children don't have the problem. Why would you put petitions in elementary kindergarten for those children who are not yet reached puberty? That seems to be waste of funds. So I have a lot of support. I'm going to try to find out what is the next statement here. Where does this go? To court? I'm going to try to appear there and support the school board in any way I can. And just ask the question, when you remove these 3 most qualified people, how are you going to replace them? What are you going to have to replace them with? Will there be another election? Is somebody going to appoint these people? Will these people be allowed to run again? I am disappointed in the lack of problem solving and ability to look at problems in a logical way. Normally, on a day like this, I would be in the Storm Center if I were still working for Dayton Power and Light. I've been there 32 years with Dayton Power and Light as an engineer and architect. Unlike this day, I would be out there in storm restoration, organizing crews, analyzing problems, trying to provide service for those people on life support. I can't see that. 1 minute? Okay. I would be out there trying to, my entire career has been problem solving. 32 years with Dayton Power and Light, 14 years at Wright-Patterson in the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, 3 years active duty as a captain in the Corps of Engineers, Bolivia, Panama, making maps, teaching maps. A lot of travel in Europe, a lot of travel in South America and Central America. I drove back from Panama back to the States when I got out of the service. I have a lot of experience with different people. And I think we just need to learn to get along and try to solve problems. So, a lot of Kepner Trio, a lot of things to teach you how to solve problems. Identify the problem. Where is the problem? If it's just those 13 or 17-year-old kids who are confused with their puberty and growing up and their bodies changing, that is the area. It's not kindergarten. It's not middle school. And when they say it's 1% or 2%, it's not just boys. It's boys and girls.
Thank you. That's time, Mr. Bailey. Thank you for your comments. Okay, do we need an executive session this evening? I am not aware of anything, so for the first time in a long time, we have no executive session. Keep in mind, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, we will have a special meeting on June 22nd at 4 p.m. I believe it was in the communications, and I think I'm misreading it.
Yes, it was in the communication.
So my apologies. The primary purpose of that meeting will be to conduct interviews for our interim superintendent. However, we do have 2 tabled items as well. I imagine we will do the interviews first, but yeah, that's an executive session, so I'm just letting the community know, so I'm as open and transparent as I can be. If there are no further comments, then I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
I'll motion.
Thank you, Mrs. France. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Mrs. Hageman, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue? Yes. Mrs. France?
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:57 p.m. I want to thank everyone for coming and making their comments. Have a good night.